This is Reality Dispatch, written by Jim Mintz.
She kissed him and held it on his lips. He reciprocated. When she broke away, she turned toward the bathroom. He watched as she strolled off and smiled to himself. A waiter handed him a menu, and he asked for a moment longer before placing a beverage order. He wanted a coffee more than anything else in the world at that very moment, but he wasn't sure what her ideal brew was. They had only been married for 12 hours. Prior to that, they were newly in love, and things like habits involving routines were mysteries awaiting discovery. When she ventured back, she had 2 menus in her hand, and he held up his to show her that that element of breakfast was being taken care of. She nodded and dropped them on an adjoining table. She took a seat and leaned in to kiss him once more. He reciprocated. "I love you," she said. "I love you," he said back. They smiled, and he turned to the menu. She kept staring at him and grinned. He looked back and grinned too, and then they both laughed. "It's ridiculous, isn't it?" she said. "What is?" "The morning after a wedding. Like, how are we supposed to act?" "I don't know," he said. "Let's just eat. Maybe that will help us settle into our new routine," he suggested. She picked up her menu and began thumbing through the offerings. "Would you share a croissant with me?" "Oh, I was thinking about the eggs," he said. He presented a worried look, not wanting to disappoint on day one. She recognized it and held his arm. "It's okay, I'm not offended," she laughed. He joined her. The tension was breaking away. The need to maintain a sense of perfection was waning with every laugh they took at the pressure their new union had presented. She was comfortable with him. She would grow more comfortable with him as the days, weeks, and years passed. He too was growing fond of their routine, which would morph and become a staple of his desire for normality in a world that would grow increasingly chaotic. "Okay, I know what I want," she said. "Me too, the eggs with a side of bacon," he said. "Okay, I'm having the French toast. What about coffee? What do you have?" "I usually have a skim cap with 1 equal," he said. "I don't have anything sweet, but I will have a skim cap." "Okay, great," he smiled. "Eggs and French toast with 2 coffees of similar descriptions. I think this will work," he smiled. He stood up and pointed toward the counter. "Unfortunately, it's not table service," he said. "Okay." She leaned forward for another kiss. He bent down and reciprocated. She held her palm to his cheek, indicating her desire for him to remain attached to her longer than necessary. He reciprocated. When they broke apart, he whispered that he loved her, and she did the same. He walked over to the line that had formed at the counter and reread the menu to make sure he had it memorized for his turn to order. He put the fold-out down and looked at the table to observe her. She was staring off into the distant windows that overlooked the river. The boats were passing in jams that had built up as the morning progressed. It was the festival of the Spectrum Lights, and the city had an influx of tourists. The vibe was energizing, and he was keen to take his new bride around the sights and sounds of her adopted city. He looked ahead and saw the line had diminished by a couple, yet there were still 3 ahead of him. He turned back to his bride. Then he was hit with a distant memory. He had blocked it out months ago, or perhaps years. He didn't know when the last time was that he had thought of it. Maybe it had been years because the happiness he now found himself in was measured in smiles his facial muscles weren't even used to. Yet still, in the midst of a happiness influx, at the height of his personal accomplishment, the peak of his private achievements, the memory arrived. It hit him in the temples as a reminder never to be rid of it, no matter what elements of calmness and peaceful tranquility arrived to give off a sense of pleasure and serenity. He remembered her face, the look of fear that washed over her eyes as he opened the car door on the freeway from Heathsmith to Borderville. She was a hitchhiker, and he had been driving all night. He had made the decision instinctively as she had only just appeared in his headlights momentarily. He was growing weary and so pulled over the SUV for the company. He had no idea she would be so engaging and so attractive. He was instantly perky for the duration of the trip, which he was happy to discover included a stop in Grantster. "My mother was from Grantster," he remembered telling her. "Really?" "Yeah. Born and raised. She moved to the Big Smoke when she was 15. He didn't remember much of their conversation that followed. He just remembered her getting more familiar with him as the night progressed. She inched herself closer and closer to him as he drove on the dark road, the only illumination coming from the headlights on the horizon and the mini LED lights from the dashboard and the radio. Just enough to keep her beauty in his sights. The line had dwindled, and he was next to be served. His mind returned to the memory. He didn't have long left with it. His new life was awaiting. She leaned into his pants and placed a palm on his crotch. He swerved, not knowing how to react. He thought about pulling the car over. Her hand moved over to his pocket, and with a swift movement, she reached in for his wallet and pulled it out with a quick reflex of her elbow. He was shocked, driving at such high speeds and being robbed in the process. He leaned over and unlatched the passenger door. She had not been buckled in, and she was swept out instantly, disappearing into the void. The fear in her eyes was the only look she left behind. He hit the brakes and stopped the car, leaving it idle in the middle of the highway. He killed the lights and trekked over to where he thought the body might be. He found her 20 to 55 meters away from the skid marks. She was lying on her stomach, face down. He saw his wallet spread out on the road next to her arm, which could have been mangled and twisted. It was hard to tell in the dark. Using the light on his phone to identify his leather-bound wallet and making sure not to focus it on her body, he retrieved the contents and raced back to the car, placing it into gear and driving away at 40 miles over the speed limit. "Next, please," came the cashier's voice. He proceeded back to the table and leaned in for another kiss on the lips for his new wife. She noticed something about his face had changed. She quizzed him on it, but he was unable to explain satisfactorily why he appeared different. Unsure wasn't the right word, just uncertain, unaware of something. He was off in the distance when she was right here, waiting for him to return. She held out her hand and watched as he placed his in hers. She looked back up into his eyes, but they were somewhere else.
For more stories of fact-based fiction, head to jimmins.substack.com.